GM, good morning. Welcome to the Milk Road Show, the daily crypto show that hits harder than an early 2000s mixtape. I'm your host, Jay Hamilton, and today we are joined by Kyle Reidhead, co-owner and head of research at Milk Road. In today's episode, we are talking about two tokens, Sui and Aptos. Why is Sui up almost 100% in the last 14 days? What the heck is going on with that token? Aptos up almost 50% in that same period. We're going to dive into what's going on, try to explain that. And more importantly, we're going to look ahead. Which one of these tokens is going to win in this cycle? If we compare them to others like Solana, how do we think they're going to compare? Will either Sui or Aptos be the next big L1, the next Solana? Is that possible? And most importantly, should you dump all your money into Sui or Aptos, or should you listen to the end of this episode to find out how you should allocate to your portfolio? I think you should. As always, we need to take a quick moment to give a shout out to our friends over at Gemini. Discover Gemini, the US-based exchange built for new and advanced traders. As a special welcome gift, they are offering new customers $15 in Bitcoin just for trading. At Gemini, security is the top priority. As a licensed full reserve exchange and custodian, your assets are well protected. Plus, they offer cutting-edge security features like passkeys to keep your accounts safe. This exchange is setting the standard for compliance and innovation so you can trade with confidence. Head over to gemini.com/milkroad and start trading today to earn your $15 in Bitcoin. Sign up now and get ready to join the trading fun. Kyle, welcome to today's show. The question on everybody's mind recently, I mean, there's many questions on everyone's minds, but one of the big ones is what's going to be the next L1? We had Ethereum 2 cycles ago, then we had Solana, and there was a battle last cycle between AVAX and Terra, and Solana ended up being the one that won out. Who is it going to be in this cycle? Who could be that next big L1?
It's interesting. There's a number of options this cycle of who's kind of going to be the next big L1. Whether we actually get an L1 that really makes it is obviously we don't know. It's interesting. We had back in 2017, you had a bunch of different L1s and they all did really, really well, right? Ethereum launched, I think it was like 2015 or something like that. But you had Ethereum, you had EOS, you had Cardano, you had a bunch of these smart contract platforms that were promising the world, and they freaking ripped in 2017. Like they did so well. You could have bought any of them and you would have done amazing. But then the bear market came and a lot of people left, and Ethereum was the one that really grabbed traction and really built an ecosystem, a community, etc. And so Ethereum continued to reach all-time highs in the next cycle. But in the next cycle, Ethereum did well, but it wasn't the best. You had, as you said, Avalanche, Terra Luna, Polygon, and Solana, which were the sort of big ones. Again, none of them had adoption by any means, just like Ethereum and Cardano, and all those didn't have adoption in 2017. They just ripped in price out of promise. The same thing happened in 2021. And then, of course, the bear market came. And I mean, Terra Luna completely collapsed, doesn't even exist anymore. Polygon still exists, but hasn't done all that well this year anyway, in terms of price action. AVAX still around, still kind of competing, but hasn't really done as well as Solana was the one, just like Ethereum last cycle, that really built the community, built an ecosystem, got a bunch of developers to build on it, has a bunch of apps, and is like the chosen one. And now it's like the same thing's probably going to play out this cycle. We're probably going to do the same thing where a bunch of these potential L1 tokens just absolutely rip, but for no reason in terms of fundamental reasons. And then one, maybe two, whatever it is, actually stick around at the end of the cycle and do well in terms of gaining community, gaining an ecosystem, getting apps, getting developers, etc. All of the tokens will probably crash like crazy, just like Solana and all the ones did last cycle. And we'll talk about kind of why that is. But we've got Sui, we've got Aptos as two of the big ones. There's Near. There's probably Sei, which is SEI. And then, I don't know, there's some others that haven't really launched yet, like Monad or Barachain, or a bunch of these other kind of like L1s that have raised a lot of money. And so there's a lot of noise around them, but will they actually be anything? It's hard. Like, I think nowadays with Ethereum and Solana so established, I think it's going to be tough for any chain to actually like kill. I don't think any of them will kill these chains. Again, this is separate from price action. Will they kill in terms of like beating their ecosystem, moving all the devs over to there? Like, I think that's going to be very challenging to get network effects like what Solana and Ethereum have accomplished. But I think probably we get one that does it. The rest will be like the AVAXs and the others and the Cardanos, where like they're still existing, they're still trying to build, but they're really struggling to get adoption. So that's sort of the story of how it all has gone. And I think the same thing will come true this cycle.
And the interesting thing is, in yesterday's episode with Matthew Siegel from VanEck, we talked about how their belief is that one chain will have the large market share of L1s. Yeah. There will be one that ends up in this more than 50%, more likely even 70 to 80% of the market share. And it is still early. And yes, Ethereum and Solana have the lead, but it's still early. So it is still possible that another chain could end up
early,
there.
but it's not that early. Like Ethereum's around since 2015, right? Mm-hmm. And yes, it's early in terms of users, but there are tens of thousands of developers across the Ethereum ecosystem. So like, that's a lot. That's a big sum compared to like next to zero on all these new ones, right? You've got tens of billions of liquidity over on Ethereum, and you have less than $1 billion on all these new L1s. Some are in testnet, so they have zero. So you've got all these apps like PayPal and whatever, and then crypto native apps that are already building over there. Which what I think people miss of what that means and why it's so hard, and why I think what he was saying before from VanEck saying that like probably there's like an 80% network effects, let's call it, or market share, is because like for all that liquidity and all those apps and all these like devs to move over there, it's because they've built developer tools, they've built the integrations, they've built the analytics tools and the data tools and like all the things that you need. Like it's not as just like I launch an app. I need so many things to launch that app. I need developer tools. I need courses and lessons on like how to write in a certain language and how to do a certain thing. I need other companies to support what I'm doing, to audit, to do like, again, all these different things to actually allow my app to exist and to succeed. There's so many things you need more than just a single blockchain that exists, right? You need all the other things around it to support that business, including users and liquidity and all this kind of stuff. And that is so hard when you already have runaway network effects with Ethereum, and Solana managed to do it, or at least it looks like they will do it. And so they've already starting to get that. But even with Solana and Ethereum, people don't realize how far ahead Ethereum is on like these network effects of developer tools and et cetera. It looks like Solana is going to do that, but like for another chain to do it, man, it's going to be so hard. And so I agree, probably one chain gets 80% plus. And I think that chain already exists, whether it's Ether, Solana, I don't know, but it's going to be very hard for anyone to come from zero and capture that. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean other chains won't do well in terms of price. But in terms of killing ETH and Sol, I think that's just out the window at this point.
Yeah, you stole my line. Okay, so maybe it's hard for another chain other than ETH and Solana to win the adoption battle and to be the major L1. But right now, in this cycle, there is opportunity for Sui, Aptos, and some others to be the dominant in terms of price. And we're going to get into Sui's price action and why they're up so much in the last month in a minute. But first, I just want to give everybody a bit of background for those who don't know Sui and Aptos. Why are we talking about Sui and Aptos in the same episode?
Yeah, so there's a reason why they have so much mind share right now, because Sui and Aptos are blockchains which actually came out of Facebook's blockchain that they had. I think it was called DM. There was another name previous to that. I forget what it was now. But basically, back in, I think, 2019, Facebook planned to launch its own private blockchain, and it was going to have a payment system on Facebook, which would have been absolutely nuts if this thing ever got to launch, where there's already, 3-4 billion people on Facebook and Instagram. And if they could have just like integrated in Facebook token or whatever the token was going to be, or some sort of like stable coin, they were going to do it on top of this DM project, which is a blockchain, and they had their own wallet called the Novi wallet. And it got shut down basically because of countries around the world were like, there's no way we're ever going to allow you to do this, because Facebook would dominate every fiat currency if they did this. Like if Facebook launched their own token to 4 billion people, no country is able to do that, right? Like the biggest countries are India and China, which have 1.5 billion. And so that's the best that they can do. No country has the power to say, like, hey, everyone, here's this token, go use it digitally. And so Facebook would have been the biggest country by a large margin if they were able to do this. And countries were like, no way we're allowing this. And because Facebook is a centralized company, they could just go, hey, Mark, you do that, you go to jail, right? You never come to my country again if you launch this thing. And so they were like, okay, we got to shut this down. Now, what's interesting, though, is they spent years building this. They wrote their own language, so developer language called Move. They had a ton of technology. These guys that built DM and Novi were extremely smart. They have been and worked at Apple and Google and Microsoft and built so many things. They've won awards. Like these guys are as smart as it gets, that were moving into the crypto space and building a blockchain and building a wallet. And so when it got shut down, they were like, well, we did so much work here. We don't want to lose this. And so they actually left Facebook and they kept building this project. So DM It's kind of like the Ton story with Telegram, where Telegram was originally building the blockchain and then couldn't do it, so they sort of switched out. Same idea here. So the DM team, which was the ones building the blockchain, they started building Aptos, and then the Novi team, they spun out, they built a new labs company, and they started building Sui. So both of these have their own languages, but they are really, really good languages that are built specifically for blockchain. Rust, which is what Solana uses, is not a language that's for blockchain. It was created previous to that. Solidity was kind of one that's been created, but it's not the greatest language of all time. Whereas Move is like, it's very secure language. So it's actually much better in terms of the languages that are written. Doesn't mean people will use it, right? But it's just, it is a better language. So the language, the technology, everything they've built here with Sui and Aptos are like next level. And so they're kind of like the next gen L1s. And so again, tech is amazing, team is amazing, language is amazing, all these things. But obviously it still matters, like, will it get adoption? Because sometimes and oftentimes the best tech doesn't always win out. So there's still a big path ahead of them, a big road ahead of them to climb and make it. But the origin story is pretty cool. That it all came from Facebook. And that's why they're just known as a very legit team, very legit technology. And so they've been able to make mindshare even without, being in the space for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big impressive things that I've seen from both these teams is because of their founders' legitimacy and experience and network, they've been able to raise a ton of capital and they've been able to bring on a bunch of influencers, which might be one of the reasons why their price is so high. Let's talk about that right now, Kyle.
By the way, Aptos raised 400 million. Sui is now, I think, about 330 million. So like they have made a shit ton of money. And obviously they have the inside people into Silicon Valley, which they also have the connections. So like if Facebook was ever to go on chain, would they use Ethereum or Solana, or would they actually just use Aptos or Sui, right? Kind of like what Telegram decided with Ton. That's one of the big things that I think could be the thing that gets these to all of a sudden just like skyrocket and make it and be against Solana and Ethereum, is like if they just happen to get one partnership, because that's all these L1 blockchains need, is just one big partnership like Ton, right? If Ton doesn't have Telegram, it's a completely useless chain. No one uses it. And so like if all of a sudden Sui or Aptos, because they know the Facebook people, just all of a sudden could do that, it could put them on the map in one day.
Let's look at the price action for Sui. So I've got the chart up on screen here. You can see up 99% in the last 14 days, up 80% in the last 30 days, because it was a little bit higher and then took a dip through this last month. Everybody's wondering what is causing this massive rise. Why do you think this token is up so much right now?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. If you look at the metrics fundamentally of Sui or Aptos, like there's been no upgrade. There's been no like big launch or big partnership. If you look at their metrics of like TVL and stablecoin market cap and users and all this, it's all very subpar. Like it's not great, right? It's growing, but everything is growing in this space. Like, but it's nowhere even remotely close to Solana or Ethereum or anything. So like, if you looked fundamentally, you'd be like, this makes no sense, right? They make like, I don't know, $1,000 a day in fees. They have next to no users. Like they have nothing, right? But I think what's happening right now is people know that L1s trade really, really well in bull markets. They have at least the last two. And so just the premium of an L1 token means it's probably going to do really well. And that's because if, like we said at the start of the show, if one of them does make it, we know that that's going to go to a $100 billion project like Solana is today, right? Ethereum is almost, 350 billion right now. And so like, we know that if something does make it and it gets those network effects, it's going to be valued way, way, way higher than what they are today. And so everyone's kind of making their bets and going, which one is going to make it? And probably people just throw a bunch in Near, a bunch in Sui, a bunch in Aptos and go, oh, one of them will make it. And probably they'll all do good this cycle anyway, because everyone's trying to make this bet. Which one actually makes it? I don't know. That'll get kind of figured out by the end of this cycle. But everyone's just sort of like, let's just do it. So I think that's why all these will get a bunch of capital into them regardless. I think when I look at why Sui versus Aptos right now, it's funny. Everyone was so worried about low float, high FTV tokens over the last 6-7 months. Everyone complained about this. We had WorldCoin, which went to like, I think it was like 150 billion FTV in like February of this year when we were in bullish times. And then all of a sudden we went bearish and like the thing just bled out to like, I don't even know. It's like below 10 billion or something. So like it went down like 99%. And so everyone got so scared of these low float, high FTV. And it makes sense, right? Low float, high FTV, for those who don't know, is like there's a small amount of the circulating or small amount of the total supply of tokens that are in circulation. The rest are still vested and will slowly be released to investors or the community or the founders or whatever. And then they just sell. And so obviously there's a lot of sell pressure. But what people miss and why I think Sui is outperforming so much right now and will probably continue to do this throughout this cycle is Sui only has 26% of its tokens in circulation supply right now. So there's not a lot of tokens. And so while that is a bad thing in, let's say, a bear market, or when we have extended periods of bearish times like we just had the last 7 months, which, by the way, Sui and Aptos have done really bad over the last few months, previous to, maybe in the last month or so. But with 26% in circulating supply, it means that any demand is going to move that token a hell of a lot, right? So you get just a little bit of demand in ETH, and ETH doesn't go up much. It maybe goes up 1%. You get a little bit of demand in a token where there's only a few of them that are actually circulating supply, and this thing jumps 10, 20%. And you got to remember that crypto is very reflexive, right? So it's very momentum driven. So like something goes up 10%, whereas everything else went up 2%, people notice that. You just go on CoinGecko, you see that, you're like, oh, it's the top performing one. It's why we're talking about Sui right now, right? And so what happens then? People go, oh, maybe Sui's going to be the next big thing. It's performing really well. And then other people start to buy it because its price already started going up. And again, because it has low circulation or low amount of tokens in circulation, again, what happens? Well, all of a sudden, the thing just skyrockets again because it's so elastic or reflexive, let's call it. And so it's a momentum trade. And I think this is going to continue. This is exactly what happened with Sol last cycle. There was no reason that Sol made it to, I don't know, it was like an 80 billion or I think it was over $100 billion FDV when it had next to no users, no apps, no nothing last cycle. But it had a smaller kind of low float, not as low as Sui. And it was that L1 premium where everyone was like, one of these things is going to make it. And so capital automatically goes in. And then it just like doubles or triples because of this like low flow. And I think that's exactly what we're going to see in Sui. Aptos is similar, but it has 48% in circulation. So it's not as exaggerated as Sui is. And the Near and the others, they don't have that. So Sui actually has something that none of these others do, which is funny because it's not a good thing. You're going to get completely wrecked in the bear market. When demand goes away, this is going to be really bad. Just like Solana went down 99% last cycle, probably Sui is going to do the same thing because it has so much unlocks. But the unlocks, what people missed, they don't matter right now. So I think Sui is going to rip as a result of that. And then it'll do quite bad in the end of things. Now, and then as long as, and this is the trade that we did with Solana, which was Solana did this last cycle. It ripped to like multiples you could not imagine. It went up like 13,000% or something like that. Ridiculous. Then it went down to 99%. But if you're paying attention, Solana's fundamentals continued to improve throughout that whole time it was going down. It had more apps and more developers and more liquidity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we started buying Solana at like under $20. It's now sitting at, I don't know, 150 or 160, right? It was an obvious trade because fundamentally it did well. That's what we'll have to see in the next cycle. Do you continue to buy Sui next cycle? I don't know. We'll see what happens fundamentally.
Okay, I want to talk about what the trade is here for Sui or Aptos in this cycle. But before we do, I just want to touch quickly on a few other elements. Tech comparison, influencer influence, to use the double there, and then the grayscale trust that has come for Sui.
Yeah. I think, look, the tech, I'm not a tech person completely. So like, I don't know for sure, but from everyone I've talked to, like the tech is great on all these. Near, Sui, Aptos, they're all extremely fast, extremely cheap, extremely efficient. So like, I don't know that the tech is really what's going to matter here. It's going to be the partnerships, the adoption, the biz dev, like all these things, right? We have so many blockchains that are cheap and fast now. So like, I don't think it really matters that you got mega ETH over on Ethereum. You've got all these L2s that are now super cheap. You've got Solana. Like the tech to me is not that big a deal. It has to be good, obviously, but I don't think that's the differentiator. Now, Sui and Aptos are doing things a bit different. They're building everything in-house. And so like the wallets and all the things are all built by Sui. So like maybe that's going to make a difference, but yet to be seen. We have no idea. So I think that's one thing. The next thing is Sui has had a lot of attention on social media right now, a lot of attention. Now, I don't know exactly why, but generally when that happens, it means that they're doing really good marketing. They're paying a bunch of influencers, et cetera, to promote the project. Nothing wrong with that. It's not bad. It's just how business works. I mean, everyone did this, right? Every single company in the entire world, well, except for like some, but has generally had to pay for marketing. And the best way to do that in this world is influencer marketing. It just so helps that in crypto, when you have a token, that if you tell a bunch of influencers to promote your project, people will buy your token, the token goes up, and then that's also marketing, right? So again, more momentum trading. So I don't know if that's what's happening. Whenever I see so many big accounts on Twitter or YouTube all of a sudden talking about it and saying it's bullish and showing charts, I tend to think there must be something going on behind the scenes here, but I have no idea. So don't like take my word for it. It's just what I think. Either way, good marketing is what it is. And again, this just adds to the fuel of that demand that I'm talking about on a low float token, which is extremely bullish when we're going into potentially the banana zone and just more bullish times in general in crypto.
Yeah, and the
There was one
last
more you
thing,
said.
yeah, is the Grayscale trust, and the reason I bring that up is a lot of two reasons. One, that is bringing in new liquidity towards Sui, but also people look at Grayscale trust and they see a trust happen and they think, oh, ETF next. Now we got an update on the Solana ETF yesterday, so go and listen to that episode if you want to understand what's going on with the Sol ETF. But just tell us a little bit about the impact of the Grayscale trust for
first,
Sui.
I think there's no ETF remotely even close for Sui. It cannot happen when a token has 26% of its token in supply circulating. It's fully owned by one company. Like there's just no way. So there's just no way that's happening. But what this does do is one, there's a demand driver. I'm not sure how well this thing just launched like last month, but those that don't know, Grayscale launches these sort of like, they're not private trusts, but there's only certain people that can go in them and certain accounts that can go in them. And they've done this for, I mean, they have a Solana one. The premium that thing is nuts. They have a Maker one they just launched a few months ago. And they just recently, I think a month ago, launched the Sui one. So one, there's more demand that can get there for institutions or people that want to play this trade that aren't on chain. So that obviously, again, adds to the fuel, adds to that demand thing. And it just sends a signal like, hey, if Grayscale's making this, it's probably pretty legit, right? So I think that's kind of the two things there.
Okay, let's wrap with what's the trade.
So I think the thing that people need to understand is there's a good chance that Sui, I know it's gone up, like 100%. You said in the last 14 days, it probably continues to go up a shit ton. I think like there is a good chance. Show that chart. There's actually a chart that I think Raul Paul put out comparing Sui to Solana from last cycle. The thing that people need, so this chart right here that I'm showing shows Solana last cycle and how it like went up and up and up and up. And it went in these kind of phases where like it goes up like crazy, it tops out, a bunch of people take profits, so it comes down and then it rips again. And then again, people take profits, it comes down, and then it happens again. And it happened like 3 times last cycle for Solana. And so Sui right now is kind of mapping that. The reason this happens is everyone that's putting in big money into Sui right now, everything I've just said, they know this. They know that Sui is not being fundamentally priced. Like you can throw PE ratios and price to sales ratios and all that stuff out the window. No one cares. No one cares about fundamentals right now. No one cares about any of those metrics. It does not matter. What everyone knows is there's low float, which means there's massive opportunity for reflexivity. Everyone knows there's a lot of people talking about it. It's a high profile team and it has good tech. And so there's potential for it to be the next L1 where it gets that L1 premium I talked about. So like it's almost a given that Sui is going to go up this year. But because there's this like reflexivity to it, there's a given that it's probably going to go up a lot. And so like if you look at that chart that he just showed, if you compare it to what happened with Solana, I think it's about a 20x. It's basically Sui hitting $20. Okay. If you got Sui at its lows, I think it was like at 50 cents earlier, like earlier this month, maybe even. Yeah. It was down at 50 cents in August, below 50 cents in August. Okay. If it maps what Solana did, it's going to $20. That's a 40x. And that's probably going to happen in the next year, which is absolutely nuts. And so what's happening right now is there's a lot of people that know this and probably institutions and big money that's going to come in and just everyone's like, this is a game. It's on. Let's just do it. And so what they do is this pile in money. They let this thing absolutely run up. They let retail and others FOMO in and then they dump. Okay. But it's not over. They dump. You'll see like Solana had crazy pullbacks last cycle. Like I'm talking 50, 60, 70, 80% pullbacks in like a day. Like, I don't think people are prepared for how volatile this is about to get if this plays out the way that Solana did, which I think it will, again, because of the low flow. It might even play out even worse than Solana did, like even more aggressive. And so, again, institutions will play this. So they're going to buy it up, and then a bunch of people are going to come in and FOMO, and then they're going to dump. And this thing's going to just go down 80%, and then they're going to buy it again. It's going to run it up again, and they're going to dump. And they're going to do this multiple times. In Solana's case, according to the chart that Raul has up here, it happened 3 times. And so will it follow exactly Solana? Like, I don't know. We'll have to see. But anytime there's momentum in the market, my guess is that they're going to funnel money into Sui. It's going to just absolutely rip. And then before that momentum stops, they'll start to take profits. And then when the momentum goes away, all of a sudden the thing is just going to bleed out. And so again, if you want to play the game, play the game. There is so much money to be made in this game, but it's not easy. It means probably you're selling or you're buying on dips and you sell when it rip. But you do not hold this thing at the end of the cycle. You do not hold this thing because the thing you got to understand is like when the top happens in this cycle, like Bitcoin, you usually have months to sort of get out before it gets down to like 50% below its top, right? With these tokens, you have a day. Like literally in one day, this thing is going to go down 50% from the top. And if you decide I'm going to buy there, all of a sudden it goes down another 50% in another day. And then you are just completely wrecked. And that's what's going to happen. And because what's going to happen is a lot of people that are new to crypto will come in 6 months from now, once Bitcoin's at 100K and ETH is at all-time highs, Solana's at all-time highs. A bunch of people come back and they'll go, oh, the Sui thing is the big performer. I'm going to buy it. They'll buy Sui at $20 and then their money's just wrecked. Or what will happen is people even here that are listening to this episode today will buy this. They'll put some in Sui today. Sui will go up 5x. And they'll be like, holy shit, I love Sui. I made the most money in my life on Sui. And they'll keep buying. Like every dip I'm buying. And then you end up getting completely wrecked. And so if you want to invest in this thing, I'm not saying don't do it. There's a lot of money made. Do it. Just know what you're doing here. Know that this is a game and everyone knows it's a game, right? So it's a whole different, it's not investing. It's a whole different vibe. It can be fun. If you happen to get out on time, it's going to be a wild ride. But I think that's what's going to happen with Sui here. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Everybody listening in, I want to know, are you guys invested in Sui or Aptos, or which L1 do you think is going to be the next big L1 in this cycle?
And I just want to say, I wouldn't sell a bunch of ETH or Solana for this. I would sell a piece. We always say 80% in majors, 20% to just play around with. Do it with your 20% if you want. I think there's great returns to be made. Just like, again, understand what's going on here and try to time it. And if you can, like, good on you. It's going to be fun.
Are you?
But also don't look at metrics. Don't look at like the things like, is it growing still? Right? Like, oh, it's getting more users, it's getting more TVL. So like, it's probably going to keep going up in price. Forget all of that. People are going to start saying that on Twitter. Forget it all. It doesn't matter. It's already probably overpriced for what it currently is. And when it 20x's from here, it definitely, none of it matters. It doesn't matter if active users triple or 4x or 5x in 1 month. It's all irrelevant. So don't worry about any of that. You're just looking at price action and just hoping to get it on time.
Okay, so do your own research, invest at your own risk. Lots of opportunity here, but do not put all your bags in this because the wrecked potential is very large.
Kyle, put all your bags in it right now and make sure you get out on time.
Oh God. Oh God. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Not financial advice. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening in. Let us know which L1 you're most hyped on in this cycle in the comments. As always, please support the show by giving us a like, smashing the subscribe button, turning on the bell so you get all of our notifications. We do this show every day for you guys to keep you guys up to date on the markets and make sure that you have an opportunity to make life-changing money in this cycle. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a wicked awesome day. As always, if you liked today's episode, please hit subscribe and make sure you follow us so you don't miss out on the next one. There's also a link in the description to our free 5-minute daily newsletter where we simplify crypto for you while making you laugh. And if you're willing to step up your crypto investing game, we're going to also leave a link for Milk Road Pro. You get access to our portfolio where you can see exactly what we are buying. This is your #1 resource to help you invest successfully in crypto. One final note, this show is for educational purposes only, and nothing we say is financial advice. Investing in crypto or any asset is risky, and you should never invest more than you can afford to lose. Thanks so much for listening in, my friends. Have a wicked awesome day.